Right. He's down.
Have you noticed how many owls we get on camera swooping in and getting critters in front of our cameras?
Yeah, that's pretty neat. That's something I never really
That's
thought
hilarious.
about is the thousands of little rodents that have to be eaten all the time to keep the owls around. That is
It's
pretty...
probably really convenient when we sprinkle some grain in front of the camera to attract them. Those owls just pick them off.
Yeah. I don't know. I know hawks will take out turkey poults. I don't know if owls would or not. I assume they might, but knowing the owls are more active at night.
Yeah.
Turkeys are up, but...
I love listening to a couple owls in the mornings.
Yeah, although there are a couple of them that are a little screechy.
Yeah, when they fire up right above you.
Yeah. Owls are pretty awesome. Walking in the dark and set in the dark, whatever, doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I know what's out there and what's potentially out there, and I guess if a cougar's gonna take me out, it will. I mean, no sense worrying about it because I'm not gonna know it's there until I'm dead anyhow, right? So, but it must be raccoons that will get into fights sometime. Yeah. And man, they scream like somebody's getting murdered. And always two of them going at it. The other possibility is sometimes bobcats will make some horrendous noises too. But I generally think it's what I'm hearing is raccoons because always there's some splashing around. And
last year was the first time I'd heard a bobcat get a rabbit.
Yeah.
And the rabbit screeched and another bobcat came flying in. That was really fun.
Yeah.
We have that predator call. Dad's always had it, the little wood rabbit screech call or whatever, fawn in distress maybe. I think it's a rabbit. And we used to play around with that and make awful noises. That's exactly what it sounded like.
I always have intentions once deer season wraps up, get out in January, February, March, and hit the coyotes real hard. That's something we need to do, and I don't know, I always get busy with other stuff.
But you've done a pretty good job of actually getting them during archery season or turkey season.
Yeah, I actually have lost count, but there's a couple of, the does are everywhere this morning.
4 of them.
Oh, there's 2 more going off in the beans over there. I have shot nearly as many, or maybe even more coyotes with my bow than I have deer. I haven't got one the last year or so. I didn't shoot one last year, but yeah, I'm to the point now where I'm, one, fully committed to shooting as many coyotes as I can, but 2, realizing that the deer aren't gonna care if there's coyote blood all over that tree stand.
Yeah.
Take a shot at them. Coyotes and raccoons, I'll fling an arrow at them.
I just haven't had a chance. I've tried to call a couple coyotes in close from the stand and they just don't have it.
Yeah.
So
I've had a couple of them. I've made little squeaky noises with my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a couple of them at least to come over and kind of check it out. A lot of times though, if there's more than 1 or 2 of them, usually they're kind of heading back up to a den or something and they're not interested. I'll come and check it out, so that's a little more difficult. But actually I have a lot of actual electronic call that I need to use. And
have you listened to, I think I'll probably say this wrong, like Realtree Outpost podcast?
I haven't, no.
There's an episode, and I've only listened to maybe 2 episodes and not even the full thing, but one of them that caught my attention was the guy was out turkey hunting, was out turkey hunting and called in a bobcat, and the bobcat attacked him and broke the guy's neck. He had to...
Oh, boy.
He was okay, recovered and whatever, but I've had multiple times where called in bobcats with a turkey call and a decoy, and that's really cool.
There's a guy I used to work with that was big into calling coyotes and stuff, and he always carried a handgun because he was convinced that, in addition to whatever he was going to shoot the coyotes with, but he was convinced that if a lion was going to come up on him, it was going to come right from behind him, and he wasn't going to be able to get it with his long gun. So I don't know if the handgun was for shooting the lion or himself, but I don't know. Maybe it was on working class that, some of these western hunts, the things that are going to get you are either bears or lions, and you got to watch out for the bears, but don't even bother worrying about the lions because you're not going to know about them until it's too late anyway. That's
something I think about a little bit. You talk about walking in and sitting in the dark. I'm generally not scared either, but I do try to be aware. But I guess maybe to your point, it's not worth worrying about because if something's going to get you.
Yeah, although it is a little unnerving. This has happened a couple of times. Like, I'll walk in and it's almost like you hear more steps and they're not going away from you.
Yeah.
They're either behind you or parallel to you, and you'll stop and you still hear a couple more crunches. And then you move and you stop and you hear more crunches, and you get in the stand and you hear a few more crunches, and like whatever that is following me. And I'm pretty well convinced it's generally a possum.
Yeah, I was just going to say, 9 times out of 10 when I've investigated that, it's a possum.
Yeah, but it always gives you the feeling of, wonder what's following me there. There's only one time that I can remember really being creeped out going into the stand in the dark, and it wasn't an animal. I parked up on the hill where I normally do and start walking in, and even from like the top of the hill, I could see down in the valley, and I don't know, it'd been 300 or 400 yards away, there was a light, and a bright light. Like, well, great. Somebody's down there with a flashlight or a headlamp, and they're either gonna turn that off and I'm not gonna know where they're at, or I'm gonna have to confront them because this is a long ways in the property, and I kick them out of here. And I keep walking in, getting closer, and well, it's still there. It looks like it's moving around from a distance, but it's still there, bright whitish bluish light. And get down in, get in the creek, kind of take the trail in, and I lose it a little bit. So, well, great. Now whatever it was is turned off, and I'm gonna run into them. Finally got down in there and went around the corner, and we had a trail camera set up. Turned out it was like a little status LED. It was a little blue LED, and up close, like you could barely see it when you're standing 5 foot away from it. But for some reason, from 200 yards away, it was as clear as day, and it looked enormous.
It wasn't aliens, huh?
Yeah, it wasn't aliens. Boy, I thought for sure I was going to have to confront somebody there, and that's one thing I don't want to have to do in the dark.
I don't remember now, I should, on our current cameras, if it has those same setup of LEDs, but on those cameras, if I remember right, if you don't click it to on and you leave it on setup, you get that blue LED on the front. And that's probably my fault, because I was notorious for not getting it turned on.
Either that, or I think they might have did that when it was like a card full thing too. Yeah. But I couldn't believe a little tiny LED. Like in the daylight, you wouldn't even hardly be able to see it.
Oh, right, yeah.
But from...
And they're only like a quarter inch.
Yeah. Heck, I was parked a quarter mile away and could see the thing. Yeah. And it was not like it was out in the open either. It was down in the trees. So as I was walking, the trees passing in front of it gave the illusion that it was moving around.
Yeah.
So that was the one time I do remember being a little sketched out. That and the couple of times I found the bioluminescent fungus. That's always
that's kind of
weird.
Cool.
Like, oh, good. I just walked through an alien crash site.
Yep.
Twice, I think I remember finding that. That's the craziest
stuff. I've seen it multiple times. It's in that, I'm sure it's other places, but that CRP field that we got to walk through.
Yep, and it's always actually it's like a morning like this, where it's cool and damp, is when I've seen it.
The crazy thing about it is, at least what I've observed, you can catch it really well out of your peripherals.
Right.
And at a distance, you walk up to it, and it's really hard to focus on it.
So the first time I saw it, I was so sketched out by it because it was only one little patch, I don't know, a foot or so around. And like, again, in the dark, I'm trying to stare at this stuff. So I got my nose right down the ground. And when you're doing that, you can't really see anything. So I took one of my arrows out and I drew scratched a great big circle around it in the hayfield and went and hunted. And I came back out. Well, in the daylight, you can't tell that there's anything different about that spot as anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to start looking about it, reading about it. But yeah, the 2 times I've seen it's been on top of that hay meadow, just right on the crest of one of those hills after the hay's been cut.
Oh, okay. I've seen it in the bottom, down in the CRP. That's where I remember it.
I'm always looking for it.
Yeah, it's that really cool stuff.
Yeah.
That makes the hunts really interesting. I like looking at
well,
stuff
that's
even
the kind
from
of
the
thing
trees.
that if I wasn't out deer hunting, I probably would never have seen it. Always loved the real cool, the clear mornings and a stand location where you have a big view of the sky and being able to see like the International Space Station or whatever.
Satellites going across.
Satellites cruise across. And
falling stars, all that good stuff.
Yep, that's always really neat. Man, all this stuff about hunting that's not really about hunting. It's just kind of getting out in the woods and looking at stuff.
I love getting out in the early morning and closing my eyes, leaning back against, and just listening to what's happening.
Yep. So I don't know about everybody else. I have suspicions, but I have my morning ritual for everything. And so I always try to get, legal shooting time is half an hour before sunrise, right? So practically that means the first actual light you could actually see a deer, see your sight pins on, because it really only starts to get light at that time anyhow. I always try to get in at least a half an hour before that. So for most things, that means I look at sunrise time and I need to start walking in an hour and a half-ish before sunrise. If I allow myself half an hour to get in and half an hour to... So that not always is that the case. Sometimes I'm a little behind or whatever, but on those mornings where there's no moon and it's pitch black, it takes a lot longer to walk into the stand than if there's a full moon. Full moon, man, you can just jog right in a lot of times, making all kinds of noise. But first get in, put my bow up at the bottom and climb up in the stand and set my pad down, get hooked into my harness on the tree, clip my pack on, pull my bow up, hang it on the hanger, and then I just set. And once I get my stuff up there, just sit there, close my eyes, whatever, look at the sky, but spend 5 or 10 minutes just sitting, doing nothing else. And part of that is like I got to get my gear up there so it's around, but then try to relax from the walk in, get my heart rate down, make sure I'm not sweating and getting cold. I wear glasses, and so I find that if I'm moving, I'm fine, but if it's cold and damp, I get up in the tree stand and I'm huffing and puffing around. Well, now my glasses are all fogged up and wet and I can't get them cleaned off. But if I just get there, look at the sky, get myself quiet and calm for a little bit, wait before I do anything else, then I'm in a pretty good mind. And give it a little bit of time, then get my bow off. I almost always take my quiver off. I have a detachable quiver, and I don't like the idea of snagging it and stuff. So take it off, pull one arrow off, get it knocked, get my bow hung back up, get my quiver situated. Always have to do try to feel the knock and feel the veins and try to make sure it's oriented right. A lot of times I can't see. And I do usually wear, if it's dark, if there's no moon, I usually do wear a little red headlamp in, but it's not often I turn it on unless I'm walking to a new stand or something. Probably would be a good idea if I did, because I know where the stands are, so that's not a problem, but I always seem to forget where a fallen tree is or something, and I'm walking into it, and I should just turn this on and not crash into things. But
I don't know who's in charge of laying out branches every night, but I can never remember where.
Yeah, well, it's always like I know exactly where I gotta turn, but it's like I either go not far enough past the tree or too far past the tree, and then I miss my exit in the clear trail, and I'm crashing into stuff. And, it's gonna be a real treat this year because there are trees and limbs down everywhere, and we just haven't got stuff cleaned up. So places that have been clear for a decade, now we're gonna have to learn what tree to walk around. And
yep. We'll have to figure that out, I guess. Going back to your morning routine, getting an arrow knocked. That year I shot that wide buck in the West pasture. That was the first year I had illuminating knocks. I think you'd gotten them for my birthday.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there pitch black. It was the morning that I shot that deer and getting everything set up, and I go to knock an arrow, and that particular style of knock has the button, when you press the button on the string, it lights it up, and then you've got to kind of pry that button back so it doesn't make contact to reset it. Well, I forgot I had lighted knock, pushed it on there, and boom, it lit up.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, crud, I can't do this. And I couldn't figure out how to reset it. So I just grab it off and shove it clear down in my pack. Now I got a broadhead sticking straight out of my pack, right by my face. And then I get a new one when it gets light enough to see what I'm doing. But the ones I have now, I guess I don't know how they work either, but they're different styles. So
yeah, man, illuminated knocks.
I think they still activate when you shoot and the string makes contact, but I think you can just maybe pull them back. I don't know. They're easier to reset.
So there's all kinds of, there's the little push button kinds. There's kinds with, so the carbon of the arrow is a little bit electrically transmissive, I guess, conductive. So there's kinds then that have a little electrode contacts that contact that, and then once it gets shoved in tight against the top of the arrow, it makes contact.
That could be the way these are.
Different kinds, and man, I don't know. They are so cool when they work, but I've had about half of them not work, and then I'm struggling with getting them reset and not triggering them when I'm stringing up an arrow. And
yeah,
I don't know. I have.
So are you not using them now?
No, I still have them.
They're expensive.
They are expensive, and I got new arrows that the inside diameter is a little tighter than the last ones, so the knocks are super tight in there. And so then to get them, so the kinds I have now are the ones that you have to pull the whole knock back a little bit to make those contacts disengage, and they're so tight that I almost have to get pliers to pull them out.
Yeah.
I think the ones before that you had to use like a knife or they were inertial driven, so they had like a little piston inside of them. You have to get a knife or tip of a broadhead to push it.
I use a broadhead tip, which is probably not safe.
Well, but what else are you?
But when you're in the field, that's what you got to do.
And those are a real pain if you trigger them in the tree stand, because now you got to find something pointy to stick in this little tiny hole. And
that was my case, so I had to just wait until daylight to figure it out. And luckily, I had two others. But
I kind of like the ones I have now, where you can just pull the whole knock back just a fraction of a millimeter, but they're awfully tight now, so you can sand them down just a little bit, make them work better. I just got to do that. So I don't know. I have, again, one of those things that sounds really awesome, but if I would just make a really good shot every time, it wouldn't matter. Yeah,
there's been a couple times, I guess maybe the knock didn't work, that I've either missed or hit a deer and couldn't recover my arrow, because I thought, well, surely I can go back at night and find this arrow, and then you don't. And maybe that's because the knock didn't light up, but for the most part, I think they've worked for me.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think I've recovered the fletched end of every arrow I've ever shot, but for some reason, if I break an arrow in a deer and they shed half of it, I've lost. Man, I'm surprised we don't have three-legged cows walking around out there stepping on broadheads that I've lost, because I have lost so. I don't know where they go, because you can follow the blood trail right to the deer. You'd think it has to be within a couple of foot either side of that,
Yeah.
And like this last year, he took 6-inch, 8-inch chunk of arrow with him, just poured blood like it came out of a bucket. He didn't, went 50 yards. You could see right where it went. No idea where the other end of the arrow went. It's probably obvious if you torched the ground, burnt all the leaves off the ground, you could find it, but I don't know why it's so hard to find that end of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, saw a lot of deer this morning. That was kind of cool.
Saw some moving, maybe not what we expected, but or wanted, I guess.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. Well, it's that time of year now that they're holed up in the green soybeans pretty good for the next month, and once all that starts coming out and the corn starts coming out, it'll be a lot more visible.
And we talked about this yesterday, based on, I would say, the majority of our trail cameras, the exception being one camera. If we had to forecast our year or our success on pictures, it wouldn't be a very good outlook. Yeah. And that's what it's been in the years past, but now we understand you can't put a lot of stock into what you get for pictures throughout the year.
Yeah.
One of the last podcasts I listened to the other day, the guy was talking about not worrying about putting out cameras early in the year. And to a certain degree, I agree with that, because it is true that what we see maybe May through the end of July isn't indicative of what we'll see in November.
Right.
But I got to say, it is encouraging, even if you see one big deer that you don't ever anticipate seeing again. It's really encouraging knowing that there's that genetics out there.
Yeah.
There is the possibility of that deer coming by, because most of the time we're not seeing the deer that we get pictures of anyway. So I don't mind having them out early, especially with these cell cameras that send them to us. We're not out there traipsing around getting tick bitten and stuff, checking cameras.
Yeah.
So,
and I completely agree with that. Obviously you're not going to be doing your patterning in June, right? But watching them grow antlers, watching the fawns is so darn cool.
Yeah.
And then you get all the ancillary stuff, right, too? You're talking about seeing the owls get all the little critters. We got pictures of badgers this year. I had no idea there were even badgers around here. Yeah. And if we wouldn't had the camera up in, I don't know, what was it, April or May?
Right.
And there was a mama with two baby badgers walking across the pond there.
That's another animal I'm somewhat scared of. I don't think I'd like to get a hold of a badger.
I'd hate to do that. I'm honestly more afraid of stepping in a hole and breaking my leg than anything. But walking off the creek. But there's just so much about, sure, you're not going to get a whole lot of useful deer info in March, April, May. I like to see when all the antlers have dropped. That's pretty neat. But getting all the turkey pictures, man, that gets me fired up for turkey season, seeing them strutting around and all the others. So if you look at it as more of a all-encompassing wildlife farm inventory tool as opposed to just wanting the deer, I think that's where I'm at. The buck pictures are awesome, but really, again, it's just, hey, that's pretty neat to see what's out there.
Yep. It's kind of crazy. Like, we haven't even had an opportunity to hunt this year, and I'm already looking forward to next year. You talked about this, like, okay, where are we going to look for sheds at? That's maybe ridiculous to even think about, but we're kind of to that point where we're looking forward to, okay, how are we going to set up potential food plots next year? What do we got to do to... right. So you mentioned that, like, we haven't even sat out this year, and I'm already thinking, okay, once January rolls around, I want to take these trees down. Once, March rolls around, these are going to be the spots I'm going to be hitting for sheds, because this is where we had food at. And, like, I'm not even considering the fact that hopefully we'll have a couple of deer on the ground that we won't even be looking for their sheds. Yeah. Like, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but that's a fun part of the whole process, right? Give you something to look forward to. And then back to the camera part, there are easily 4 bucks that I can think of right off the top of my head that we're pretty sure survived. Well, one of them you have the sheds of, but the others we're pretty sure survived past rifle season last year that we haven't had any positive pictures of that we can tell. Maybe early on when they're underdeveloped, but that's super cool. So we potentially have 7 or 8 deer that we'd be very interested in shooting this year.
Yep, just gotta hit the time right and hope the does are around to bring them in. And people get hung up with the trail cameras, and it's easy to think you own a deer because you got a picture of them, and maybe you get caught up chasing got a picture of him a week ago, so that's where I'm going to be at. You're chasing a ghost and whatever. But man, looking back through, I mean, we literally have a decade and a half of pictures now of documented deer that we've had on our farm, and most of them we never even saw in person, but there's some neat stuff out there, and just having that is super neat.
I'm super appreciative of the stories you hear of like neighbors after a deer's been killed. Neighbors sharing stories about the deer, pictures, even if they don't hand them over, like sheds or whatever. It's so cool. That's really all I would ask. We get some good pictures of some great deer, and we end up not harvesting them. But I would be super excited just to talk to the guy that did shoot them.
And that's one of those things, and I don't know if this perspective is exactly true or not, but it seemed like 30, 40 years ago or whatever, everybody got their deer, they went to the gas station and the feed store or whatever, and you showed off your deer or whatever. And it seemed to get to be a point where like nobody shared any information on anything. Mm-hmm. You really had no idea. Well, now with social media being what it is, so prominent, it's very easy to communicate with people. And I really appreciate people that do put up deer pictures or whatever, especially if they are local and are willing to talk about it, because we all want everybody to shoot the deer they want, right? And so there's no reason to be grumpy about it or not. And I understand, do whatever. If you are the kind of guy that doesn't like any of that attention, awesome, more power to you. But especially if you're local and you can help build that community, that's pretty cool. Everybody, we'll all be on the same side, right? As long as they're not saddle hunters.
Or crossbow. One of the things, so like we would maybe ordinarily be secretive about, well, we don't really share camera pictures until after the deer's harvested. I think that's a good rule. That's for most people. We don't have the opportunity of being secretive about where we hunt, because anybody can look up the location of our farm, and they can do the same thing we did this morning, drive around and get an idea of what's out there. So we can't possibly think that we're hiding anything about what we're doing. We don't go out and broadcast. And quite honestly, if people think we're shooting world-class deer, they're way off base. No. Because we have not gotten to that point. Well, then, I would caution somebody that thinks, well, I'm going to find out where somebody's shot such and such deer and hunt there. People have said this before, that deer's gone. If you see somebody that shot a big deer and it's been shared, well, that deer's gone off the planet. So there's no point in following their footsteps and trying to encroach on their hunting location. So just get that out of your mind from the get-go and go have fun and find your own big deer and keep that to keep that location to yourself until you get it shot and be happy with it. But
well, and if you're willing to put in a little bit of work, more than likely somebody's going to let you. You can find somebody that'll let you hunt as long as you're kind of a decent person. And you may have to work at it for a few years, but then again, if you're just chasing antler, that's all you're doing. You're kind of missing the luminescent fungus and the bobcat screams and all the other fun stuff that go with
alien eyes.
Yep.
Well, let's go eat some breakfast or something.
That sounds like a good plan.